Hey guys, so we are back with another episode of Student Stories, and today we have Jyotsna with us. She is currently pursuing supply chain management from Fleming's College, Canada. So Jyotsna, please introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Jyotsna Nischint, and I'm from the south of India. I came to Canada in January 2019, and I graduated out of supply chain management program in April. And I've been working for the past 6 months in a manufacturing company as a supply chain coordinator.
Okay. So that's really good to know. So, what was the what? Tell me more about your passion and interest. Why you got into supply chain management?
Okay, so like most of the Indian students that come to Canada, or most of the Indian students that graduate out of college, I am also a software engineer by profession. So I worked at Accenture as a application development analyst for over 2 years, and then I wanted to pursue management studies after my engineering, but then my finances were not like I did not plan my finances, so I had to take time in order to plan everything. And then while searching for the best courses, I thought, why not go to Canada and do some management courses and see how it goes. Like move from India and see what my opportunities are out there. So I came here for project management, and while studying project management, I had to support my expenses and education by working part-time jobs. And I've been working as an e-commerce associate with Walmart, and while working there, I was really intrigued with the enormous amounts of logistics involved, and how a product is traveling from raw material to the end user as a finished good. So I was really interested in it. So I wanted to learn more about it, and that's why I chose supply chain management.
Okay, okay. So that was really interesting. Uh, so, what is the most like major challenge in supply chain management, and what are the future prospects of this stream?
I would say, to be honest, supply chain and logistics is everywhere. Like every single thing we use, there is so many companies and industries involved, and we just think we're just going to a store and buying an iPhone, but there is so much logistics and manufacturing and a lot of activities involved before we get the end product. So unlike many other streams, the demand is always going to be there when it comes to the industry. That is one of the main reasons that people always go for these programs, because supply chain is not only limited to manufacturing. There is transportation, there is imports and exports that's happening all the time, and materials that are being handled. A lot of things there in the single industry of supply chain. So the demand is always going to be there. And even what I have felt during COVID-19, during this pandemic, is that like Walmart, for example, I work at Walmart, so they have been the busiest in the entire year during COVID. So just imagine how many companies would be involved in transporting it, manufacturing it, packing, and everything. So even in this situation, supply chain has the industry is still striving and surviving. So I think it's a really good industry to be getting into. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole backbone of all the businesses are supply chain only. Amazon is surviving on it.
Oh yeah.
So, before you started your study abroad journey, so what was your criteria? How you chose college and universities for yourself?
Okay. So one of the main concerns, like major concern for me was my finances, because I'm the eldest daughter, and I did not have much support. uh, my mom's a housewife, and I was supporting the family for so many years, so I did not have the money. I only had the dreams that I wanted to study and uh, do something big in my career, and but I did not have the finances. So the first and foremost thing I focused on was getting my financial plan right before I stepped here, because I had to take an unsecured loan. So a lot of students might be thinking that, oh my God, I don't have any security, I don't have anything that a bank will loan me on. So so I have an unsecured loan, and when you get an unsecured loan in India, the first and foremost condition is that you have to be paying the interest from day one. From the time you get your loan amount in your hand, you have to start paying your interest. So that was one big question in my head, because once I land here, I had to get a job. Only then will I be able to pay my interest and survive. So that was one of the major things that was in my mind. So the same finances played a major role in me not opting for a university and going for a community college. The university fees was almost $10,000 more than what I could afford. So that's one of the main reasons that I chose colleges. So if students ask me, which one do you suggest? You would want me to go for a college, or do you want me to go for a university? I always tell them a university degree is always uh, uh, good when compared to a community college's degree. But at the same time, but at the same time, it's all upon the individual. Like it's your talent that's going to speak for you at the end. So even if you graduate from a university or college, doesn't matter. All the interviewer is going to look for is if you have the knowledge and the skill set that they're looking for. So that's what I advise. Like I suggest to all my students, based on your finances, you can choose if either you want to go for a college or a university degree. But if you're on limited finances, going for a college is not too bad, because the syllabus and the professors that teach here, they're all really good. So it wouldn't change much. If you want to go for a university experience, you could go for it. And if your finances, so yeah.
Okay. So apart from finance, are there any other criteria for choosing any college?
One more thing would be I have seen my fellow students look at is the cities. Mostly students prefer studying in a community college in a big city when compared to smaller towns, because it is easier for them to get a part-time job in bigger cities like Toronto, Scarborough, and Mississauga, etc. However, if you go to small towns, there would be like very limited part-time work opportunities. Also, students prefer colleges like Seneca, Humber, like the colleges in the bigger cities, because after they graduate, it's all they get used to the city for the 1 or 2 years they've studied there. So it's easier for them to make contacts for their full-time job opportunities. So that's the trend among students. And then also one more reason would be your expenses. Bigger cities are going to cost you more, obviously.
Yeah.
So some students come to smaller cities, they finish their education and then move to the bigger ones for job opportunities, and so that they can save up enough money in the difference that they make from the expenses. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the major hurdles in studying abroad is the finances, which most of the students are worried about. So can you explain what are the finances involved and how did you manage your finances?
I did not have any money when I came here, so I depended solely on my educational loan. So I took the loan for my fees and my the GIC that I had to pay. That cost me around 16 lakhs for my first program. 10 lakhs was my fee, and 5 to 6 lakhs was my GIC, depending upon the exchange rate at that time. And then after coming here, I started searching for job opportunities, and I got a job. So the how the GIC works is you would be given you would deposit $10,000 in a bank account in Canada under your name. So once you land here, they're gonna, for a 1 year program it's $10,000. For 2 years it's 20,000 now, I think. I'm not sure, but so for 1 year it will be $10,000, and when you land here they'll give you $2,000 for the first month when you activate your account, and then from after that every month for the next 12 months you will be receiving $670 approx. So you would have, you know, that for the next 1 year you're going to have $670 in your hand.
Okay.
Students on a study permit can work part-time hours for 20 hours is your maximum part-time hours you can work every week. So weekly 20 hours. And some students who struggle a lot, they tend to find some on-campus jobs. Like colleges and universities have lots of student job opportunities, like for part-time. Some students try their level best and secure those jobs. So on-campus job hours do not count under your your social insurance number. So most students tend to do that. But even then, if you work for 20 hours a week for 4 weeks, you would, and the minimum wage is $14 in Ontario province. So you would be able to make like $1,000 to $1,100 a month. And then on top of that, you have your GIC of $670. So $1,700 a month on a study permit would be more than enough for any student to manage their, even if they have interest, they can manage their interest, their apartment rent, the food expenses, travel and everything. And on top of it, they will be able to save some money for their next program fee if they want to.
So let me know, how do you manage? Is it very difficult to manage your study along with part-time job?
Unlike the regular college hours that we are used to while studying in India, colleges and universities do not follow 8:30 to 4:30 timetable here. Some days you might have just 2 hours class for the entire day. Some colleges have all your six. If you have six courses in a semester, you might have the 6 courses done in 2 days. Like you might have 3 courses every day. So it's like that. And every course is most of the colleges and universities have classes that extend from 1 hour to 3 hours. So they tend to be able to, they try to cover the syllabus, and it's good as well because you're not tired. Like you don't sit in the same classroom from 8:30 to 4:30. Sometimes you don't have. So when they do that, you'll not be attending the college all 7 days a week. You'll have like 3 to 4 days off. So those are the availability hours you give on your part-time job, and that's when you can work. So it's pretty much balanced, and all the professors they do know that students work part-time. Everybody does part-time here. So
okay, so that's really interesting to know. So can you tell your experience about your projects or internship, what you did in your college?
Okay, so as part of my project management and supply chain, both the programs, my final semester had projects. So when I was doing supply chain management, I was one of the top students in my class. So I was chosen to do some internship work for a company called Canvida Incorporation. They are a medical cannabis manufacturing company here. So cannabis is legal in Canada. So yeah, so I did some SOP work and some basic entry-level work for them. And it was a really good experience. A lot of supply chain programs in Canada have co-op, which is like you will study for two semesters, and then for 4 months you would have to try and get an internship in any company related to the field. So it was a really good experience for me, and it prepared me for what I should expect in my future jobs. So yeah.
Okay. So what are the challenges you faced while doing your post graduation?
The for the main thing that Indian students
Yeah.
coming for studies here face is that the entire educational experience is radically different from what we're used to in India. So in India, you're given textbooks, and the questions are gonna come from there. If you're a matriculation or state board student, it's gonna come from there. And we have to learn pages and pages of stuff and write essays and all that. It's completely different here. There is more emphasis on the practical knowledge rather than the theoretical knowledge. To be honest, I have written maybe 4 or 5 essays in my, like, 4 or 5 long answers in my 2 years of education. Most of the questions are multiple choice, or where you have to apply your knowledge. It's like a situation that it's not there in your textbooks or anything. You just have to apply whatever you have learned to those. And there is a lot of emphasis given to emphasis on assignments. Assignments and your project work constitutes more than 50% of the coursework. So exams only consist of like 15 to 20%. So it's like exactly opposite to how we studied in India. So that is one of the things. You don't know what is gonna come in the exams. Those are the few things that I struggled when I started my during my first 2 to 3 weeks. But then I got used to it, and one more thing is we can even if we copy paste from the internet, nothing much happens in our assignments. But here it's considered plagiarism is a really strict thing across all Canadian colleges and universities. So references and all those things will be new to the Indian students coming here. But apart from that, at the end of the day, it's just hard work and how much you're keen on learning it. That's what gets you there. Yeah.
So I think you have scored 8 band in IELTS. So how did you achieve that, and how was your experience?
So I've been pretty good in English from my childhood. I used to read a lot, so I knew I do well. But then, as I told you, I did not have any money before I came here. I used my the variable bonus that I got from my full-time job in India to pay for my IELTS exam. So I did not have money to go for classes. So I learned everything on my own. And I learned through a few websites, which I always recommend to my students if they ask me for suggestions on suggestions and tips to do well on their IELTS exam. The main thing on IELTS would be to know the exam pattern well. You should know the entire exam pattern like the back of your hand, because IELTS is designed in such a way that you have to sit in the same place for 3 hours, and at the end of the day, it's English exam. So most students tend to perform very poorly in the writing part, because the writing part is at the end. So your brain would already be tired by doing the listening and the reading part, and when you have to think and write 250 words, so there is a chance for making lots of mistakes. So one of my students is preparing for IELTS, and so this is what I tell them: just practice writing, so that you know what's going to happen in those 3 hours. Only then you can face it well. Most listening and speaking wouldn't be much difficult. Reading, and one tip I would tell for people like students doing preparing for reading tests is they're not going to ask you for what did you understand from the passage or what is going to happen there. You just have to skim the passages really fast. Okay. You're just going to find the word, put the answer, that's all. You don't have to understand the entire passage to do it. So yeah, that's one thing I always tell my students.
Okay. So what are the resources? You mentioned you have some resources which you use. So what are the resources you used while preparing your IELTS?
Um, one the IELTS, once you book for your IELTS, they send you a book which has 4 sets of question papers. I did that first, and then there are a few websites. There's a website called IELTS Liz, IELTS LIZ. The web, if you visit the website, there are like hundreds and hundreds of free question papers for you to practice. And she also has a website, or sorry, she also has a YouTube channel wherein she has explained on how to do each part and what to expect from each part. I just saw those videos once, and then I practiced. I practiced for like 3 to 4 weeks. If What I would suggest is, if students start preparing earlier, they have to take some practice tests and know their level, like what level they are in, so that they can improve on those parts more.
Okay. So you were working in Accenture, I guess. Yeah. So how did you manage working and preparing for your higher study?
Because I decided to. I always wanted to pursue management, but the point I wanted to quit was the work pressure was too much for me, and how I handled is I used to work 8 hours a day. I just I just took holidays for 1 week.
Okay.
Prepared for my IELTS for the entire week, and then when I used to get my breaks and on my lunch breaks, and it used to take 2 to 3 hours for me to get from my office to my home every day in the evening. Like, I start at 6, I get home by 8:30 or 9. So I use that time to listen and do whatever I can do during my bus journey. So I had a short duration. I decided in June, and then I booked my test in July 15. So I only had 15 days. So I had to prepare well. So I had to prepare fast and really well. So I had to use my time wisely.
Okay. And did you apply for any scholarship? And how was the scholarship?
So here, some colleges provide you a lot of scholarship, but I unfortunately did not have any opportunity to talk with anybody here before I came here. So I did not know about any scholarship opportunities before coming here. But after coming here, I had 3.85 in my project management. My GPA was 3.85, and in my supply chain, my GPA was 3.9. So I got a $500 scholarship per semester from my college. Those were the only scholarship I got. But I've heard some of my fellow students get up to $2,000 to $3,000 scholarship. What I would suggest students is that every college and university has international students committee, which is there to answer and guide you on anything. No question is silly question. That's what I tell all my students. No question is silly question. If you have any doubt, just ask me. Just leave me a text. So you can ask, email the international student committee members or student ambassadors, and they would reply to you. You can ask them about what are the scholarship opportunities there. How can I get any fee waived off? You can definitely contact them, and they would be open to help. It's not like it's very secretive. All scholarships are open, and they would definitely be able to help you guys.
Okay. So could you tell more about the job opportunities you have?
As if in Canada?
Yeah, in Canada, in supply chain management, what you're doing.
Okay. So a lot of job opportunities are here. One of the main things employers look for is experience. Because when it comes to supply chain, apart even though if an individual has all the skill set that's needed, like you're very well versed in the softwares that the company uses, and you're very well versed in the processes because you worked in a similar company, everything is okay. But companies look for someone who can think strategically, because in supply chain, timing is everything, and lots of big decisions had to be made all the time. It is little bit difficult for freshers to get into senior roles here. So you have to start at an entry level. But for people who have experience, some of my students have 3 to 5 years experience in the manufacturing industry in India. So for them, I tell them that once you come here and complete your supply chain, and you would be able to get a job anywhere, because their experience speaks for them. So for freshers, what I would suggest is whatever little project work or whatever small work that you have done during your coursework, try to put it in a big way, like portray it in a well established way, so that the employers and the recruiters see that okay, you are capable of doing this if it happens in a large scale. So that's what I tell them. But apart from that, the opportunities are really really good. I get like on my LinkedIn I have when I was searching for jobs, I set up notifications to notify me if there were any supply chain openings, and I get like tens and hundreds of notifications every day, because those are the number of openings available.
Okay, sure. Yeah. And how is the student life in Canada?
It's pretty good, you know. For an Indian student, I grew up in the same city for 25 years. So coming to Canada and being on my own meant lots of freedom, and I could travel anywhere I wanted. I was very serious about my studies because I had loan and everything, but at the same time I've traveled a lot. I visited a lot of new places, tried a lot of new things. It's been really good. I mean, students would love it, definitely. Some of them might feel a little lonely or homesick in the beginning, but then once you start seeing all the good things that are bound to happen to you, you start enjoying yourself, and it's been really good. Like now that I started working, I feel like maybe I should go back to my student life. Like when I was a student, so I was studying and then I was working my part-time job. On top of that, I was also able to enjoy my higher education. So it's been good.
Okay. And when the students arrive in Canada, what are the 6 top things they should keep in mind when they arrive in Canada? Like, what are the top things they should do?
Okay. The first thing would be to get your social insurance number. You can only work with a active social insurance number, so you can get that at the airport as well. But I booked an appointment with Service Canada and got it. But some students tend to get it when they land in the airport itself. So your social insurance number is one of the most important documents that you need here. That's one thing. And then I would say start looking for accommodation before coming here, especially if you're going to be landing here in winter. Like if you're starting your program in January, you have to start looking for places in October. You can some of the sources I used were there's a website called Kijiji, Kijiji. So on Kijiji, you can just enter the city you'll be going to, and there are you can put in your conditions, like you want a single bedroom or you want to share it with someone, or whatever your requirements, and you'll be able to find a lot of places. And also there are lots of Facebook pages. For example, if you're going to Seneca, you'd be able to find so many different pages, and you can communicate with students and connect with students that or alumni. They could be from your same city in India or same state in India. You could definitely reach out to them for help and to find an accommodation. So accommodation is a must because even in summer and fall you'll be able to find accommodations easily, but in winter it's a struggle. I've seen people staying in a hotel for 1 month. That's gonna cost you like $1,000 because they couldn't find an accommodation. So one thing is that. So second, that would be the second thing. And third thing would be have your own laptop. A lot of students think it's like in India. No, here you need a laptop on your own to do all your assignments, your classwork, notes. Everything can be done there. So get that. What did you suggest?
Okay, I guess those are really good points we should keep in mind before we arrive in Canada. And what are the great mistakes people do while planning their studying abroad journey?
I would say they have to inquire more. You're making a big decision of your life. Like once it's done, like once you've paid your fees, it's done. Like even if it's a big step in your life.
Yeah.
So make sure you're patient and you decide this is what this is what you want to do. Because I know a few people who come here and they find it's very difficult for them to cope up with the system and how it all works around here, and then they just stop coming to college. So just think it through and make sure this is what you want to do, and then inquire well. Like so when I chose my college, I had a friend who had studied here like 2 years back. So she studied in 2015. So I came here in 2019. Yeah, so that's 4 years. So I asked her how the college would be, how the program would be, how the professors would be, and ask someone who has been there so that you would know. Because at the end of the day, it's like 10 lakhs. Like
yeah.
So 10 lakhs is some big money. So just make sure you're going into a good place and just don't lose hope if you can't find a part-time job. I find a lot of students like going through sadness and depression because they cannot find a part-time job. One of the things here is to remember after coming here is you have made it past everything and you're here. So just don't lose hope, and part-time jobs can open anytime and you'll be able to find it anywhere. So just don't lose hope. I have known people who found a part-time job only 6 months after coming here, and then some people, they just get a part-time job when in India itself and then come here. So I've seen both the extremes. So just don't lose hope, be positive, and accommodation, one of the things I would suggest is don't rush and sign up a lease before even coming here and seeing the place. I've seen a lot of students get cheated out of their money. They would have paid for the landlord, the said landlord would have showed some pictures and they would have been like, okay, this is beautiful, I'll pay you. And they would have paid advance, and after coming here, the place wouldn't exist at all. So I have had some students face it. So make sure it is legit before paying anything, or because it's big money.
Yeah. Okay. And according to you, what are the myths people have in their mind related to study abroad?
Well, one of the myths is I think professors don't take you seriously. You know, you can go to class whenever you want. You can get out of class whenever you want. It's not like that. Some like universities and colleges do have do keep a track of you, and after all, you're a student there, so they're just not gonna be like, oh, you can come if you want, you can go if you want. They think they can be free here. They don't have to go to colleges. They can bunk and all that. Oh no, that's not gonna happen, because uh, and also the coursework is a bit heavy, because since we are not used to doing lots and lots of assignments on our own, we always depend on Google, or but there's lots of research involved. We cannot just copy paste our friend's assignment. A lot of work goes into doing the coursework, so the coursework is heavier. And and one thing is, people always compare the Canadian dollar to Indian rupee. They think one Canadian dollar is close to 57 rupees, so I'm gonna make a lot. But the thing is, expenses here are also equally. So
Yeah.
if I was making 30,000 rupees in India, it's $600 here. But it doesn't mean I can accomplish everything I did for 30,000 in India for $600 here. $600 would just be enough for me to pay my rent and my groceries. But in India, I used to run my entire family of six with 30,000 rupees, and I would still be able to pay 2,000. So that is like, oh God, if I go there, I'll earn. So it's there, and uh, a lot of students expect, once they're out of college, they expect jobs for $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year. You would be, I wouldn't say it's not possible, but you have to develop all the skill sets that's needed. Like, I know of some of the core jobs, just like in India, mechanical and civil core jobs would just pay less. It's the same here. Entry level jobs in your related field will still pay less when compared to other jobs like with experienced people in it. So I would just say, don't build too many castles in the air. Just come here and see what it is, because reality is completely different from what a lot of people portray. A lot of people be like, come here, all your problems will be solved and everything, but still you have to work hard. You have to put in all the hard work that's needed.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. So before closing this call, I would like to give like top 3 advices or tips for students who are pursuing their study abroad dream.
One thing would be, prepare your mind well. This is nothing like we're used to in India. So even if it is hard, you cannot do anything. You have to complete it in order to get your degree. So so prepare be prepared. And one main thing I tell all my students is that there's a platform called LinkedIn. Some of the students just know about it after passing out of college here. And so LinkedIn is a very important and powerful network. So I would suggest my students to open a LinkedIn profile today and start building your profile now, because the number one thing recruiters look at is, once they see your application, they go and take a look at your LinkedIn profile. And one thing that we are not used to in India is networking. If you want to get a good opportunity, not just looking for opportunities. If you want to know a lot of stuff, you have to talk to a lot of people. You have to learn. So I would say networking is a really big thing, and LinkedIn is one of the biggest platforms to do that here. So have an active LinkedIn profile, not just share anything, like just post or share only that what makes sense to you. Because once you graduate, you can reach out to recruiters, people, whomever you want to, you can reach out to. But in order to make sure that you're going to get that reply back, you need to have a really good profile that you have built, your LinkedIn profile. So if any students are going to watch this, I'm going to say, start building your LinkedIn profile today.
Sure. So that was really an interesting chat with you. So Guys, if you want to connect with Jyotna, I will drop the links in the description. You can connect with her on LinkedIn, right? You are most active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm there on LinkedIn.
Okay. So you can connect with her. If you have any other doubts, you can drop in the comments. So thank you, Jyotna, for your time. And
Thank you. Thank you. It was nice
hope this
talking to you.
session helps other students. Okay. Thank you.